Hey legends, and welcome back to the least knowledgeable sim racing channel, where we're covering what feels like the biggest event in rFactor's recent history. Well, sans that Le Mans thing, which was the biggest esports event in history. It's the long-awaited GT3 physics update. A few months ago, Studio 397 issued a balance of performance update to the GTE cars, which arguably made them some of the best vehicles to drive in all of sim racing. You guys will be aware of my feelings here based on all of my recent footage being done with the Ferrari R8 GT3. Well, the good news is that the GT3s have just been brought up to this same spec. Because I intend to test every single one of the official 12 GT3 cars in rFactor 2, this video is going to be a long one, so I don't want to waste it away on the intro. Just enough to tell you to connect with us on the new official Discord server listed down below. We host some great discussions with friendly people and moderators, making sure nobody descends into the typical poop-flinging sim racing shenanigans. I want to hear what you guys think about this new update down there. Beyond that, if you're an rFactor 2 fan, as I am, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to stay up to date with our ongoing series covering 18 free laser scan tracks available for the game. Moreover, because I'm apparently cramming as many of these in a short burst as I can, I've now officially teamed up with the fine people over at Fanatec and have an affiliate link down below. So if you're thinking about grabbing any Fanatec gear and want to support this channel and ensure its continued existence, I'd be greatly appreciative if you used it. With that out of the way, let's get to testing these cars. Welcome to the amazing new GT3 balance of performance / physics update. The massive, long-awaited update for rFactor 2. The time when we get to see, is it finally up to par with ACC? Who's the king? Who's edging out who? Where are we at? I mean, these are the two leading sims, in my opinion, for GT cars, and I can't wait to try this out. So we're, of course, in the Aston Martin Vantage GT3 at Oulton Park. Now, the reason that we're in the Aston Martin is because we're going alphabetically, and this is the very first one up on our list. And you may ask, why Oulton Park? Well, I could tell you it's because of our boy James winning his inaugural race there and da-da-da-da-da. But honestly, I just really like Oulton Park. And it's a really dynamic course, very bumpy, a lot of really masochistic curbs, a lot of high-speed turns, a lot of hills, and it's a really great basis to test the quality of a car on, really. So, let's try this out. The basis of this test is going to be one out lap and one flying lap. Now, bear in mind, these are the very first laps I'm doing of each one of these cars. There's too many cars here for me to get really indulgent with it. I want to make sure this video comes out on time for you guys. Unfortunately, the developers didn't actually get in touch with me before they released this, so I had no time to prepare this whatsoever. We've got to kind of push through this and get it done. Now, so far, so good. I'm feeling a tremendous sense of weight behind this car. Has a certain girth to it that you only get from the balance of performance out GTEs. So it definitely feels like it's a marked step up in the physics so far. Feels like there's a little bit more going on. I have to lean a little more heavily on the assists than I'm used to, because I'm used to driving the GTEs around here a little bit quicker. Obviously don't have the ABS, so my foot is very much used to just kind of finessing the brake, but on these you can really just stomp it and lean on the assist. To kind of, in a sense, almost drive slower than I'm used to. GT3 being a class slower than what my body is used to in this game. Alright, so coming around, I don't think we're up to temp yet, but I'd say it's close enough, so I'm kind of curious what we can get out of this car. Default setup, so far so good, I've got to say. Having a quick peek through what they set up, it's far closer to what you would actually run in a real-world race. Like, the tire pressures are actually minimized, thank God. Like an acknowledgement of, yes, we get how our physics engine actually works. For the time being, you still have to minimize tire pressures to get the best times. Alright, key is not to spin. Oh, definitely can't take that as quickly as the Ferrari GTE. For what it's worth, that's my reference point for all of these cars now, is the Ferrari R8 GTE, because that's what I spend 90% of my time in rFactor racing. If not the Porsche, what is it, 991 RSR? Or 911 RSR, I can't actually remember which one it is. But okay, the Aston is probably one of my least familiar GT3 cars. It's one that I never really drove all that much. So it's hard to compare what it was to what it now is. But just driving it kind of as a blank slate, if you will, it's very forgiving. It's very kind of Corvette-ish in a way. It has that floating sofa effect. It feels like a statesman car done up to be a race car. It's kind of averaging out my movements, really letting me get in there and make stuff happen. I'm actually really enjoying it. It's quite fun. I can see this being like a nice leisurely race. I think if I'm racing someone who I know is slower than me and I want to give myself a nice disadvantage while still having fun, this is probably the car I would use. Not quite as pointed as I would like. 135. I'd say we can probably get a second or two quicker than that based on the lap not sucking and, you know, obviously a few setup tweaks. Now, I should say before we move on to the next car, these are completely default setups, 100%. I'm not even changing the fuel load or anything. So I want to give you guys the impressions I get just straight up from the default that comes out of the factory. And I think so far, if this car is any indication, 397 have really stepped it up, and you're probably going to get usable and drivable cars out of the box. But of course, we're going to put that to the test ourselves, so let's move right on. I think it's the Audi next. Alright, here we are in the Audi R8 2018. We're going to run through both Audis in the game, so we're going to get to this quickly. Make sure we get it out of the way. So this is a car I didn't drive too much, but I definitely drove it a lot more than the Vantage, so I should hopefully have a better idea of what this thing is meant to actually feel like. Oh yes, that high revving engine. Alright, let's see how we go. I've got to remind myself again, this is the outlap. Alright, definitely more nimble than the Vantage around the corners. Pretty much what you would expect. Trying to get myself used to letting the engine rev out. Because, man, it's been a while. I'm not sure if this thing is actually NA as a GT3 or not, but it certainly sounds and feels like it. Oh yes, this is definitely more of that kind of pointed sports car vibe that I enjoy driving. Again, that sense of weight and girth is kind of pervading the experience. There's more going on than there was in the original model. I remember it feeling kind of, I don't know, almost kind of light and vacuous or something. But again, I'm just like the Ferrari 488 GTE, I can put the car exactly where I want it on the track. I feel like I'm in complete control of everything, and if I'm not, the car makes me aware of that. But remember that the gears on this thing are a bit shorter than the Vantage. Oh, look at that. It just wants to place itself on the road. It's beautiful. Let's see if we do this in second. Yes, we can. This car's a little more prone to spinning than the Vantage. Let's see how we go on our outlap. Let's try and aim for a 134. If I can do such things while speaking. Alright, so far so good. Lines are a little bit cleaner. Again, this car does agree with my driving preferences a little more. Again, very first two laps I've ever taken in this new reworked car. You'd have expected me to crash by now, but I haven't, so GG, rFactor. I'm guessing this car likely lacks on the straight line speed factor, but makes up for it in the corners based on how it feels through here. So easy to drive. They're kinda on the curbs. I'm unsure what that's about. Maybe I'm so used to the Ferrari and it just wanting to launch you out no matter what, but I feel like these curbs are being eaten up quite nicely, especially given how unkind Oulton Park is with its curbs. For those of you wondering, this is indeed one of the tracks we'll be covering in our laser scan tracks for rFactor series, so stay tuned for that. If I can self-promote, make sure to hit that bell so you don't actually miss out on that video when it comes up. If you're subscribed, that usually isn't enough on YouTube, I'm afraid. They've changed the way that the algo works. And of course, I had to ruin the lap right near the end. We'll fix it on the 2019, I promise.
136.37.
Wow, that's 100% not quite what I expected. I didn't expect the Aston to munch it this hard, but I think if you gain confidence in this car, you can probably throw it into the corners a lot harder than I did then. But for a first ever lap, I'd say not too terrible. Let's move on to the 2019 and see how that differs from this model. Okay, we've jumped ahead 1 year. We're in the 2019 Audi R8 LMS. Let's try this thing out. Gotta say, I was somewhat underwhelmed by the time I posted on the last one, but I guess I have to keep in mind that these are the very first laps I'm ever doing of these cars, so let's see whether the year up is an improvement. Still the high revving beast that we know and love. Whoa, alrighty. It's a bit more skatey, a little bit more loose on the rear. I feel like I'm surfing it around the corners. But remember, this is the outlap. Don't bin the car immediately. Brakes amazingly. Has a similar sense of weight to the other two GT3s. The steering and the feedback it gives me, again, is more similar to the GTEs than what I remember from the GT3 cars. I have been driving the GT3s a little bit recently, but mostly the Porsche. So once we get to that one, I'll really be able to give you an A to B comparison of the old versus the new. But so far from what I remember, I mean, this is a nice market improvement. Less so on the driving front, but more on the feel front. Now I'm very keen to actually compare these directly to ACC. That'll have to wait for another video. Unfortunately, I need a bit more of a heads up in order to get these together. I think I'm demoing somewhere in the realm of about 13 cars for this video today, so it's going to be a fairly long one. Alright, coming around. We're not fully warmed up yet, but we're close enough. Let me just check. Yeah, we're not all the way there. Maybe 2/3 of the way there, but we'll chase it all the same. Let's do this. Man, that rev limiter sounds a little weird, but whatever. Okay, that was the wrong gear. Got to do that in third, even in the short-geared Audi. Remember to let it rev out, but not that far. Brakes are amazing, really pivots around in the corners. Let's try this in a second. Well, I was expecting that curb to launch me into the stratosphere, but it was not to be. That's great. You'll have to forgive my lack of commentary here. I'm just having so much fun actually driving these cars. Again, I can't believe these are free updates for us. I mean, isn't sim racing just amazing? Isn't it just one of the best hobbies ever? Like every couple of months you can come back to a game like this or ACC and just have a whole new experience. Because in the back the guys are tweaking away trying to get the technicals more correct. Well, I didn't screw up the last corner as much this time, but I have my doubts about the time.
The lap was a 1:35.56.
Hey, a second quicker. You know what? I won't complain. I would say that my pace should probably be closer to 1:34 given the default tunes, but all things said, that's pretty amazing. And props again to 397 for dialing in the default setups to a point where I feel like I can actually drive the car. So, without further ado, let's move on to the next one. We're in the Boatley. You gotta keep it in your pants. It's not the new one, it's the old version. We gotta compare them, remember? We can't just jump straight into it, so... Speaking of cars I never drive, this is right up there. Alright, let's see how this goes. Not sure what time to expect. Man, the sound is quite something. You can really hear it resonating in that metallic coffin in there. Oh, she's heavy. She's definitely heavy. Remember, the tires are still cold. Our first ever lap in this car with its new physics updates. So far so good, seems very planted. Fairly predictable in its handling, definitely has that, let's say, junk in the trunk vibe going on. Curbs are no match for this car. It just doesn't matter, you can go straight over. Track limit, no idea what that is. Brakes seem remarkably good, all things considered. Definitely a lot easier to drive than the Ferrari. Remember one of you guys, you were saying that I enjoy driving the Ferrari 488 GTE because it's like one of the easiest cars. Man, if you think that's the case, you're really not going to enjoy the GT3 pack because so far these have all been a cinch compared to the GTEs. Gonna lean on those assists. Alright, let's see what she can do for us. Such a leisurely pace. Can she beat the 135 bracket for us on our second ever lap? Let's give it a shot. Oh man, pushed a little too hard mid-corner. I've got to say, despite the fact that I'm in Australia and right-hand drive is kind of the norm here, it feels very strange to be placed on the right-hand side of this virtual car. I'm used to driving virtual cars on the other side. She does want to spin out a little under braking under certain circumstances. I've got to work out what that's all about, but that's a small tuning issue. Probably brake bias, maybe slow bump. By golly, does she like to just eat the curbs. You really don't have to stress. I would imagine at Alton Park, a Brands Hatch, this might be your car of choice. Heck, Nürburgring even. Wow, even that one. That's the one that normally sends the cars. Right then. Almost wish I had a third lap where I could just kind of ignore the curbs. It's an easy. Probably should have down geared one more. It's hard to tell, all of these cars have very different gearing to each other. Alright, let's see how we've done. Wow. 5.12. Our quickest so far on lap 2. I wouldn't have believed it had you told me. This is the old Bentley. Let's see if the new Boatley can beat it. Now for the 2020 edition of the Thick Boy. Let's see how this one goes. No, it sounds a little different. And certainly a little different if you stall it, yes. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. This one has an interestingly high wheel lock. Not quite used to a GT3 car going up to 686 degrees, but I'm sure there's a reason for it, so I'll try it out. Getting some interesting low-speed vibration sensations through the wheel. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Not really sure why that heads-up display looks so huge on the same FOV, but I'll take it. I'll never not know what gear I'm in. Oh man, she feels very different to the old one. A lot more boatly, which I guess is probably more accurate to the real thing. Very soft, and it's like the curbs are even less of an issue for it. The steering is a little mushy though, I've got to say. So to remember, it's the outlap, we're still warming up the tires and everything. I'm trying to kind of put some heat into them in the short minute-and-a-half lap that we have at Alton Park. You need about 2 laps on this track to really get the tires up to temp. But we do what we can in the time that we have. So this is obviously the big new car that's come as a free update for all owners of the old Bentley. Well, we're still, of course, waiting for the... Oh, man. There's some kind of a corner entry understeer thing going on. I highly doubt this car's going to beat 135 with the stock setup, but hey, let's give it a good shot. So we've got to remember I'm on the right side of the car, as in the correct side of the car. Shout out to all you Brits. So, there's some interesting limit behavior with this car. It doesn't really want to pivot around as much as the sportier cars I'm used to. Surprise, surprise. A front engine estate car doesn't want to turn. Who'd have seen that coming? The braking is so easy in these things. Especially compared to the GTEs, I feel like I'm putting in no effort at all and it's just stopping itself. Definitely a newbie-friendly car. Curbs, no issue. It's just doesn't care. Just no F's given. Oh man. It's, high-speed cornering is definitely not its forte, though. I've definitely lost a bit of time there. If I was on track to beat the 135, I've definitely lost it there. Allows you to grab the inside curbs a lot more to pull the car in, though. It's definitely a strategy with this one.
The lap was a 1:35.67.
You had a feeling, with the default setups, the old Bentley actually feels a little bit more... I don't know, pointed, easy to drive. This one is very soft. I'd say if it's like, you know, baby's first GT3, you're teaching someone how to drive, or you've just moved to this game from like Gran Turismo Sport or Forza or something, you're trying to teach yourself how to drive on a realistic driving model, try this one, try the new Bentley. It's actually quite a friendly car for your first couple of laps. So yeah, not too bad. Especially great for a free update. So thank you, S397. Jumping across the pond to one of Germany's finest. I'm gonna go ahead and say it's the BMW M4? Let's go with 4. We'll go with 4. I'm probably wrong as per usual, but I'm sure as per usual you guys will also correct me down below. Having some strange oscillations on the straights here. I'm not really sure what's going on there. You're always wondering whether it's a bug with the Fanatec drivers or with rFactor 2 itself. You never quite know in sim racing. Everything's always in a state of flux. Alright, so taking our first ever outlap in this thing with its updated physics model. It likes to understeer by the looks of things, or that could just be the ice cold tires. It's curious how it's going to handle compared to the Boatley. Feels a little more, you know, less of a luxury barge and more of a speedboat kind of vibe. So the brakes are so forgiving in the GT3s compared to the GTEs. I'm still trying to get my head around that. I feel like I'm just going to spin out the moment I go back to my Ferrari. Nice. Bit of understeer on this one, mid-corner understeer for sure, 100%. I'm gonna have to take it easy. I'm gonna go ahead and say that we're not gonna be beating any lap records with this car until that's tuned out of it. So as far as default setups go, pretty good, but yeah, mid-corner understeer, 100%. Very kind on the curbs again. There's that pervading sense of weight. I don't know how else to characterize it, but they seem to have just kind of injected that in the entire handling model for the GT3s. They all feel a bit more like that 2018 stock car. There's just that sense of gravitas to what you're driving. Oh man, so much under. Definitely not going to be the lap record holder around here, but we'll do our best all the same. So much under. I'm kind of wondering what side. Okay, I'm on the left side. That's good. I'm struggling to get confidence in this car, I've got to say. The tune definitely needs some work. You're not going to be setting any hot lap records with the defaults. On the whole though, relatively honest handling. Probably not my, you know, idyllic idea for what a GT3 car would be. I'd prefer the more sporty mid-engine ones, but as far as front-engine larger cars go, not half bad. Very kind on the curves. Probably not as kind as the Bentley, but, you know, coming up a strong second place. Oh man, that understeer. So much understeer. Oh man. Wow, it's the first car that's really thrown me with its default handling balance. Very cool though, very dynamic. A lot of that mid-corner adjustment stuff going on. Again, rFactor being the king of that. Yeah. Yeah, I saw that coming. Default setup for this one definitely needs a little bit of work. You definitely don't want the car pulling you out that much if you're in a race lap. So, a lot of potential, but needs a little bit of work on this one. I have to admit, this is the one I've been waiting for. When it comes to my choice in luxury barges in racing sofas, the Callaway Corvette C7 has got to be it. I mean, just listen to this. Whoa, that turning circle though. So it's not the C8. Hopefully that'll be coming at some point. But until then, we have our Fanatec branded C7 Callaway Corvette. Ah, yes, it's feeling real good. It's feeling nice. This was one of my favorite GT3s in the past. Obviously not one of the fastest, but just one of the most fun to drive. And it looks like it's retained that character. I suppose it goes to figure with the head of Studio 397 being a proud Corvette owner. They're never going to be underrepresented in this game, which I am totally cool with. It's just, I don't know, no matter what you're trying to do in this car, it always calms you down. It always feels leisurely. It's just nice. It's just nice to drive. It's a shame it's always been such a pain in the ass to get here in Australia. You had to basically import one, then get it custom converted to right-hand drive locally, which ended up costing a small fortune. But fortunately, with the C8 coming in 2021, they're literally going to just give us right-hand drive models right off the boat, which is going to be awesome for those that are not waiting for the Z06 like I am. I can't do the plain model. I can't do it. 500 brake horsepower just isn't what it used to be. And I need my Zoo22s. I can't do an A. It's not my thing. It's against my religion. Alright, flying lap. Let's see what we can do. I have no idea what this car is capable of, but let's push it. Let's see what we can get at. Ah, that racing couch. So good. Just averages out your movements. It's just everything is so joyful. It makes you look like a better driver than you are. Probably why I like it so much. Dear God. I've definitely lost some time here. It definitely has a very unique character, unique way it wants to be driven around that part of the course. I'd need a few laps to get used to that. Stomping on those brakes, again, as forgiving as the other GT3s were. Very nice. Speaking of a sense of weight, I mean, this car is probably the king of them. Soon we'll be getting into more of the rear and the mid-engine cars. More of that pointed aspect, but as far as this kind of handling character goes, man, I'm having a lot of fun. Much as the 2020 Bentley, this is a fantastic GT3 car to use as a learner. In case you're not familiar with the class or you're not familiar with rFactor's handling model, the Corvette will see you through quite nicely, I might add. So let's see what we can do.
The lap was a 1:36.14.
Yeah, about a second off pace, kind of what I expected. Never been one of the quickest, but certainly gonna leave the biggest smile on your face, I think. Alright, McLaren 650S, one that I never really drove all that much, especially considering my great love for McLarens. So let's try and rectify that. Good old Keith pointing us toward the pit out. We clearly could not find that by ourselves. We're rocking the world's fastest gamer livery, because that is something that we're definitely not here on this channel. But you know, it's all about projection. Put it out into the universe and you'll get it back. Or not. Whoa, so this thing is very, very different. And I've got to say the scale of the force feedback of these cars does not even out. I'm using the same amount of force feedback multiplier as I was for the other cars, and it's way heavier. Way, way, way heavier. They've really got to sort out the uniformity of their force feedback. I have a feeling this is really going to hamper me on this lap. Having to fight the wheel a little bit, but that's alright. I do have that mid-engine advantage. This, of course, being closest in nature to the supercar I've been in real life, around the Nordschleife of the 600 LT. Lovely automobile, that one. I'm enjoying the more twitchy vibe of this car. Again, as always, starting to sound like a broken record, but there's that sense of weight as there is for all the other cars. And that sense of corner entry understeer as well. We need some more aggressive cambering for this track. Work out how much of the curb I can go onto. It's definitely rumbling this car around a lot more than the boats. Trying to get spirited. I'll probably need about a half dozen laps to really synchronize up with this thing, but we'll make do with what we have for now. The cars are definitely harder to overdrive than they used to be. I used to be able to just kind of point the Porsche where I wanted it and just hammer away and get some ridiculous times. This has set me back by a few seconds, actually. Which I don't particularly mind, as long as it's closer to real life, of course. Which I think it may be, having looked at the old balance of performance and what the cars were able to do around certain tracks. A lot of variability in rFactor, I think, is the problem. The more content gets standardized and locked in, the better. Wow. Well, can't say I was surprised personally. McLaren number 1, 2 thumbs up. That definitely wasn't, you know, the lap of my life, so I'd say another second or two was probably possible, especially with a couple of tweaks to maybe get past some of that, I guess, corner entry understeer effect. But I guess this used to be one of the top contenders back in the day with the 720, which ironically we're going to try up next. So I guess it probably still is. My old favorite, and probably yours too, because it was the easiest car in the game to drive. Let's see how it's progressed with the new update. Is it still OP as hell? Looks a little different, doesn't it? I feel like they've changed the interior on us. Either that or I just haven't driven it in a while. I don't think it has those new shaders. Doesn't look any newer, but just looks kind of different. Again, could just be me. Alright. Let's try it out. Most OP GT car in rFactor returns. So far so good. I'm feeling that whole don't worry mate, I'll just drive myself for you character coming through. Gotta love that. Yep. Sound balance feels a little different. I feel like those downshifts are a little more impacty. Maybe not. I think I just haven't driven this car in a while. Ever since the GTEs came out, I kind of just gave up on the GT3 class. It feels a little less on rails, I'll say, but compared to the other GT3s I've driven to this point, I mean, this is pretty much the, like, the full easy mode variant. It kind of has the best of everything. You can just munch the curbs, it goes exactly where you point it. You know, it doesn't have any of that, I don't know, lumbering front engine character, just pivoty, easy to drive. I even got on the accelerator before the apex then and didn't die. I mean, wow. See how hard it can brake. Pretty hard it turns out. None of that corner entry understeer or mid-corner effect we were getting with some of the other cars. Alright, let's give it a proper lap. Let's see what the most OP car in the game can do. Probably the wrong gear then, in retrospect. Could have gone in there a bit faster. Catch it nice and easy around the lip there. Alright. Just reminding me of why I enjoyed this car so much back in the day. Yep, that's the handling character we know and love. Thought it could go through there a little bit quicker, but it's not a GTE. Gotta remember, it's not a GTE. I love this whole braking while turning thing you can do with ABS. I'm sure you can do it with the GTEs as well, but man, you've got to be pretty skillful. Alright, second lap ever, McLaren, look after me. Definitely lost a bit of time there, it wasn't quite as smooth as it should have been, but maybe the car will make up for the difference. So honest and pivoty, it's basically the Ferrari 488 GTE of the GT3 class. I think it's still probably going to be the OP one. Unless they've done something to its engine performance to new to that. I guess we're about to find out. Yeah, cool. It's still the OP boy. Alright, congrats McLaren. Still got the crown, baby. We're in the AMG. Now, I'm kind of ridden with trepidation here. I don't know whether or not they've fixed that long-standing force feedback bug, which I know you guys know all about, right? So for years, many of us have not been able to actually drive this car at all because it's felt like the force feedback was inversed or something really weird like that, but let's see. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so far so good. Turning circle's not the greatest thing on the planet. Again, so far so good, but again, the problem got worse at speed. So coming out of the pits. It still feels a little weird, I must say. It's almost like the steering wheel lightens the further away from the center that you get it. Whoa, whoa. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to say. It, again, has that sense of weight of the other cars, but it's like, the further I move the wheel, the lighter it gets. I don't understand what that's all about. It just doesn't feel very lifelike to me. I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. It used to be basically undrivable for me. But, I won't say it's ideal. That said, the handling of the car is very cool. It actually reminds me of the differences of loading up the AMG on ACC. So that rendering of different car chassis geometry is very well done in this game, much as it is in ACC. You can always tell when you've moved from mid-engine to like really front engine. This thing feels like you're penduluming around a massive lead weight in the front of the car, which I guess you kind of are. It requires a very different driving style to the 720S that I just drove. That, and I'm partly blinded by my low seating position in this car. So it's going to be an interesting lap, this one. I hope to not bin it. Let's see how we go. Oh man, that swing, it just wants to slide. It's almost like a drift car. The Drift Statesman. Probably the closest you can get to a Batmobile in GT3, so that's got to be worth some respect. It does want to slide though, and the force feedback is no help in letting you know when that's going to happen. Things just get super light. Feels like it needs a little more grip. Wow, definitely a completely different style of car to what I'm used to. This is not going to be the lap record holder, but it's very interesting. And again, I really respect how they've differentiated its feel and handling from the other cars. It very much feels like its own thing. No idea whether I grabbed the curb then or not. Completely blinded as to what's happening underneath the car. Probably a more realistic driving sensation to what GT3 drivers actually feel like. Coming up to that last corner, I'm hoping to just survive this. Going down to first gear just to be safe. I'm not saying I don't trust this car, but I don't not trust this car.
The lap was a 1:36.37.
Yeah, kind of what I expected, all things said. So I don't really know what the end performance potential for this car actually is. Probably the most unique handling out of all the cars thus far. Probably until we get to the Porsche soon. That'll be very interesting. But give it a shot. I don't think the force feedback issue is as bad as it used to be, but do let me know down below. I'm curious how you guys get on with it on your respective wheels. The one I've really been waiting for, the Porsche 911 GT3. So, two main things. The first is that I noticed the default setup actually has the TC completely set to off. So if you see me spinning uncontrollably, I'm going to blame that. The second is that I have a tune from the old version of this car informing me it was capable of doing a 1:34.8, which I think we've already matched with one of the other cars on our second lap on the... So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if this car's going to be quicker or slower, or... Let's just go with it. With a large fuel load in here, I'm going to guess we're going to be slower. So my old lap was set, I think, with no fuel usage, no tire usage. It's got that sound I know and love. I love those straight cut gears on this thing. That gearbox. It just reminds me of the days and days worth of Nürburgring onboard footage I used to watch. Alright, the most unique handling car out of the lot, 100%. I'm going to try not to spin uncontrollably here. I'm going to try and remember this car turns itself. Don't trail brake, coast. Don't trail brake, coast. Look at that, it just turns itself. Even with cold tires. That gearbox. I just listened to that for days. I have listened to that for days. I can listen to it for more days. I've got to do an endurance event at the Nürburgring with this. I have to. It just... Maybe Manti will hire me as their official spokesperson or something. I'm excited, really excited to see what this car can do. Obviously handles a little bit differently to what I'm used to from the old version. But considering this is the default setup, it's not too bad. Because I had to tweak the old one quite a lot to get the car drivable. And as I say this, I'm sure I'm going to bin it completely on my actual hot lap. I'm excited to see what it can do. Alright, can we get into the 134s with it? Do I have it in me to actually get it there? The spoiler is no. No, I don't. Alright, got to get into my mind. Very different driving experience. The rear engine character has been rendered very well in this game. Just feels like you're going to spin constantly. when that engine's up in the air, and the rear of the car lifts up, oh man, all hell breaks loose. Gotta be real easy on that. I can come in so quickly and the car just turns itself around. Probably how I got the time. Now don't short shift. Overcooked it a bit there. It's cost me a little bit. If I can get into the low 135s, that'll let me know this car's got the potential to do what I'm going to need it to do in time. Got shorter gears than some of the others. Very nice. Do all that in second rather than first. This car and this track together are not for the faint of heart, I'll put it that way. Especially with no traction control. I don't know what 397 were thinking there. I mean, I don't think these cars are ever driven without traction control in real life. That's probably an implication on their driving model there. Might still need a little bit of work. Alright, let's see how we did.
The lap was a
Aw, man.
5.93.
Damn, that's like just over a second off the pace I had with the old version, so I don't know if it's actually been balanced the performance down, whether it's been slowed down at all, whether my lap was just that bad. I think that's probably the one. You always need a bit of an adjustment period when you move from front engine to rear engine. It's quite a shift, heck, even mid-engine to rear engine. It's quite a different experience, so it's one of the things I love about this car. It requires a completely different approach to finesse it around the track. Well, that's done, so let's move on. We're now in the radical RXC GT3, a car I know next to nothing about, if I'm honest. Other than that it sounds kind of cool, and the dash is on the right rather than directly in front of me. So, having a quick gander through the default setup for this car is a little, I've got to say, disheartening. So all of the things I used to speak about in terms of rFactor having a slightly broken physics model, you know, the esports setups all using like lowest rear wing, no traction control, and like really low camber to get their times. I'm starting to see that reflected in these setups. So I feel like these are some more, let's say, esports grade setups that have been used as defaults, and there's some very wonky looking stuff in there, like a lot of maxed out stuff, a lot of stuff running at extremes in ways that you would just never see in real life. Now again, I don't know about the radical. I'm not a GT3 race engineer, but just taking a cursory look based on what I know from other sims and from having played this game in the past, I think rFactor is probably still due for it. Wow. Okay. It's definitely due for a physics update. I'm thinking if that's what's going to happen with this car, I may have to bump up the TC to 1 point. I may actually do that just to not bin our hot lap. So yeah, I mean, it's really cool that they're giving us more usable setups from the get-go. Much appreciated, but at the same time, it's highlighting the fact that yes, this game probably needs some under-the-hood physics work. In that sense, ACC's definitely got a beat. I think the figures are a bit closer to life. I mean, you wouldn't be driving these things with no traction control in real life. It's just not how they're built. At this point, I'll actually be quite glad if I can just complete a lap. This is definitely the most interesting handling car on power. I'm actually very curious as to what kind of time it can do if you learn its idiosyncrasies. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. This is... oh man. This is not your pappy's grand car. Oh man. Wow, okay. We may have to make an exception and give the Radical a third lap because this is just not happening for me. This is definitely one of the more unique handling cars in the game. That's what I get for saying that the Porsche is the most unique, or the AMG. You can't have nothing on this thing. But having taken a gander at that setup, I'm kind of not surprised, honestly, that it's handling strangely. Can't see a regular car ever being set up like that. Don't spin, don't spin, don't spin. You can definitely feel the lack of the rear wing and also how low the traction control is. It just does not feel grounded in the way that a GT3 should. Yeah, nah, this is really weird. It's like you're meant to drive this thing by sliding the rear. It just doesn't make any sense. Alright, lap 3, let's see if we can do a little bit better than we did. This is definitely highlighting the remaining flaws in rFactor's physics engine. 138.33. I would totally expect that to be the slowest lap, so of course it was. Alright, let's keep going. Spin, don't spin. I'm too afraid to trail brake in this thing currently. You can get it to rotate a lot on power, so you're definitely doing a bit of a handoff from the trail braking to the throttle to keep it spinning around, which is definitely the quickest way to drive cars, but I don't know how lifelike it is in this case. It's a little bit, I would say, too slippy. Oh man, it's just very vague on the limit. It's constantly kind of in this sliding rotation kind of motion. You don't feel very connected to the car as a result. Oh man, this is not what a GT3 should feel like. I just want to get it over the finish line at this point.
That was a 136.79.
Yeah, that makes sense. Didn't feel like one of the quickest and did not feel like one of the nicest to drive either. I think maybe the default setup needs a bit of work. I wouldn't actually mind stabilizing the rear a little bit more because the car's very, very dancy. I had very little confidence in it. Doesn't really feel like a GT3 car. Whether or not that's lifelike, I mean, I really don't know, but I have a strong sneaking suspicion based on what we know of this driving model that this isn't quite 100% there. Well, that was quite a test. I think we highlighted the good, the bad, and the ugly there, though I suppose the ugly is all of rFactor. I love the game, but most of the content still looks like a mid-2000s potato. While on the whole this feels like a positive update to the cars, and they feel like they've jumped up a notch in handling quality, the default setups do seem to have revealed some of the things we feared about rFactor's physics engine for quite a little while. If you're seeing setups running no traction control and minimize rear wings to get the quickest times in the GT3 class, things are a little bit suspect. These cars are designed to run traction control even at only minimal amounts, and it's long been said that rFactor doesn't do the best job of emulating these systems. More than anything, this highlights the eventual need for that physics overhaul which has been hinted at by the developers. Upgrades to the drivetrain, AI, and hopefully the tyre model as well. While this is a great step in the right direction, I'm going to guess that Assetto Corsa Competizione is still going to take most people's crown as most complete GT3 simulator, at least for the time being. I plan a direct comparison between the two come the new Ferrari 488 GT3, which should be a super exciting video. Until next time, be sure to hit that sub and bell, and I'll see you back here.